is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to go to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 and go subscribe to our YouTube as well as go and check out the links that are listed in our description. We've launched our Rockin' Around the 412 Christmas fundraiser, so if you want to go check that out, it'll be at the top of the description of this show and every show moving forward into December. But this week, we have joining us the double Nick from Inside Penguins and Iceburgh podcast, Nick Brlansky and Nick Horwat. Thanks, guys. It's been a while since we had you back on, but thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure coming on this show. It's one of the best around, and let's hope we don't talk over each other too much. Thank you.
Better than Locked On Penguins.
That's for sure.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's about time you guys got a real. I mean, Gets Off just brought us in, so I can't say that, but it's about time you brought a real Penguins podcaster on, not that Hunter guy.
Yeah, shout out to Josh. We should have had Josh redo the intro saying that you guys were going to be on here, but maybe next time we'll have to make it happen. Had to get you guys on. We haven't. We tried to make it happen last week. Weren't able to get our schedules synced up. We talked about 4 guys that do other things for a living. It could be hard to make happen, but here we are. So let's start where all Penguin fans want us to start. The thing that's been dragging on since July 1st. We're going on 18 days now since the Penguins have been interested and very close to acquiring Erik Karlsson. I think you guys just recently touched on this in the latest thing that you guys have done. I mean, how can you not? Every time you talk about the Penguins, Erik Karlsson's going to come up. Where are we at with this? I mean, literally just like point blank, where are we at with the Erik Karlsson stuff?
I mean, we tried to not necessarily avoid it on the podcast for as long as we could, but we didn't talk about it for so long. Brlansky tried to, just because there hasn't been anything new, really. I mean, Elliot Friedman says the details kind of change every other day or so. As of right now, though, it seems the Penguins are still the front runners. Rob Rossi of The Athletic believes Karlsson would prefer Pittsburgh over Carolina, and it's a poker game at this point, really. It is a cold war of just who's going to bend first and who's going to give into the certain demands. The Hurricanes have their price, the Penguins have theirs, and so do the Sharks. And it's just a matter of finding who wants to meet in the middle. That's where it's in. It's at a standstill, and whoever bends first, and hopefully it's the Sharks giving into the Penguins' demands.
I mean, it can't be understated as well that the Sharks could just say, you know what, we're going to wait on this. Like it's similar to Damian Lillard in Portland, where if you wait, somebody gets injured on another team and they need reinforcements on the back end. And then all of a sudden there's a third team, and that third team might be desperate. It might be, I don't know, the Rangers that lose Adam Fox. And all of a sudden they're like, all right, we could overpay here for somebody in Erik Karlsson, get a deal done because they're going for it. So the Sharks, it's up to them. Do they want to pull the trigger this offseason, or do they want to wait and see if something better comes along? But the only risk there is Erik Karlsson comes back down to earth and looks like he did 2 seasons ago instead of last season, and the price drops. So it's a waiting game, and at the end of the day, you're waiting on Mike Greer from San Jose.
Or gets hurt, because Erik Karlsson obviously has a pretty lengthy, history there. But yeah, I mean, I can't. You guys are both absolutely right. I think the thing is, and I'm curious as to where you guys stand on this portion of it. I mentioned this last week. I mentioned it 2 weeks ago. I mentioned it probably on every episode that we talked about the Penguins since this news came out, is when you look at the teams that are being rumored here, and there's not a whole lot. Like you guys are saying, it sounds like Penguins the front runner, Carolina kind of in the mix, but depending on who you want to listen to, that's kind of like they're taking the same approach with the Brent Burns stuff, where it's like, if he falls into our lap for basically nothing, then so be it. That's kind of what it sounds like, depending on who you want to believe. When you look at the Penguins, the way that they've gone about their offseason, they've obviously upgraded the bottom 6 from a defensive perspective, but not sure how much secondary scoring punch you have there. I almost feel like you need Erik Karlsson to provide some secondary scoring. Now, it's from the blue line, of course, as opposed to the bottom 6, but to provide some scoring punch from the back end and take some pressure off the core, I think you almost need Erik Karlsson to be able to do that. Now, that's assuming – I don't know what this plan B is that people keep talking about. Like, I assume Dubas does have something else up his sleeve, but without knowing what that is on the surface, when I look at this roster right now, I think you need Erik Karlsson with the way the rest of the offseason has gone.
Yeah, I would say adding Karlsson to this team makes sense, because the beauty of this is Letang's at the point of his career where he would probably be okay with taking a back seat in certain areas. maybe playing the second power play, which is another thing that me and Brlansky did touch on, that Karlsson could step up and take the first power play unit. Maybe those two play together on that power play unit. There's no wrong answers in where they fit on the special teams side of things. As for 5-on-5, I mean, maybe you roll Letang as a second-line defenseman, which just that sentence alone, A, sounds weird, but B, also sounds like he could now last all 6 years of his new contract, right? So there's no real loss to this move in terms of adding him to the lineup. But yeah, it's going to be up to the core again in the top six to do a ton of the scoring, especially if the Karlsson are falling through, because while the bottom six is better, it's better defensively and not offensively.
I will say, though, I mean, Lars Eller's not that much of a jump down from whatever they had in the third line center role last year. I mean, Eller's eclipsed 10 goals in each of his last, 10 seasons, minus the bubble year where he had 8 goals in 44 games. So you're not really losing any goal scoring from that. And then Nola Chari is also a guy that can put up 10 goals, which we weren't going to see from Teddy Bluger. You might not have seen that from Teddy Bluger in 5 seasons. And Ryan Poehling had 7, but again, with the injuries that he had, the Penguins weren't really trusting him to be able to stay healthy through a season. So Achari's a little bit more durable in that aspect, but at the end of the day,
I mean, Nieto scored 10 too. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of an upgrade, I think, from the bottom six in terms of providing some scoring. I just don't think it's significant enough where you're taking pressure off the core players that continue to age. And that was my point.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to go as Crosby and Malkin goes, and that's going to be the storyline for the next couple of years if they don't go out and swing big and get a guy like Erik Karlsson. So, you know, I don't know if I'd say they need it, because there is a blueprint out there to being the oldest team and still being a playoff team. It's called the New York Islanders, which is a very boring style of hockey. But some of Dubas's moves sort of tend toward that direction this offseason, especially at the forward side, and then bringing Ryan Graves in as well.
Right. Yeah, Tyler, I mean, we've kind of, touched on this topic.
We've said our piece. I mean, we are both very much on the Erik Karlsson of Pittsburgh train. And I think the reason that we bring it up, even when there's no news, is because it's such a polarizing topic. Like Erik Karlsson, just the name itself, even when there's no news, you can still talk about it. So, I mean,
I might just title this episode Erik Karlsson, because I know it will do
right. And I think that it would be smart for the Penguins to bring him in, just because even though you don't necessarily have to have it, I do think that's something that would vastly improve the scoring of this team. Because even though you're going into the season with a improved bottom six, not necessarily a ton improved on the scoring sense, but it is improved, and they are definitely improved defensively. It's a gamble going into the season relying on a 36 and 37-year-old to do what they did last year. And carry that team. And so from that sense, I think bringing in a guy that did score 101 points, he's not necessarily going to repeat that, but even if he scores 60 as a defenseman, I'm not going to be upset that we traded for Erik Karlsson. So I'm all for it. And as far as I know we're going to get into backup plans. I don't really think there is a viable backup plan when you just look at what Erik Karlsson is compared to anybody else you can bring in. Like Hunter and I on his show last week brought up Matt Dumba. And I would not want to do that, just because I don't think that the offensive upside of Dumba is worth the defensive downside of him like it is with Karlsson. Like, you're not going to get a ton of defense with Karlsson, but the offensive upside is so much different than what you get with Dumba that I am definitely worth it.
Yeah, I think Dumba's a name that I brought up as well in our backup plan ideas. But the bonus of Dumba is at this point of the offseason, he might be looking for that 1-year deal to kind of the show me deal that he can still cut it in this league in some way. We get him for the year at whatever price, send him on his way. And also it's a namesake. He's got a little more youth than a lot of people that might end up on this blue line too. So that's there's a couple bonuses to Dumba, but I can understand that point as well.
Who's the other name that was brought up? Matt Grzelcyk from Boston, who's got 1 year left. But yeah, I mean, so let's just jump right to the plan B thing. I mean, we've thrown a couple names out there right now, but is there really a viable plan B? And do you guys think that Dubas is a smart enough guy where all his chips aren't in on the Erik Karlsson thing? I do think there is for sure a plan B, but what exactly is that plan B? Is it a name that we've mentioned? Is it even maybe not defense? Is it maybe saying, okay, if we can't do anything else with this blue line, if we're not getting Erik Karlsson, do we look at something else to improve the middle six?
Go ahead.
I was about to say I'm not sure what the plan B would be for the middle six right now. I mean, there's a couple names out there. Defensively, one guy that I think that honestly the talent is there. It's certainly not Erik Karlsson. There's nobody else like Erik Karlsson that's going to be acquired this offseason. Like, right. So the other name though that I would say is kind of compatible would be Tony DeAngelo. And then that's a mixed bag though. Like you get what you're paying for there. Obviously personality off the ice is one thing, but if there's anybody to set him straight, it's Mike Sullivan, Sidney Crosby. And I don't know about Evgeny Malkin. Malkin might just, intimidate him to death, I guess. But, as far as talent-wise and on-ice-wise, Tony DeAngelo brings that offensive punch and is not a sieve defensively. Probably along the same lines as what you got from Erik Karlsson last year on the defensive end.
Yeah, I like that as a player. It's Tony DeAngelo, the player, could do great things as a backup plan for Erik Karlsson. You wouldn't expect him to come in on a long-term deal either. I mean, who knows what his plans are, considering how much he's already bounced around from team to team and how his off-ice things continue to follow him. It's an interesting option. And then by way of looking at other options that are, like you're mentioning, middle six guys, I'm throwing out left-hand defenseman and Noah Hannafin, because we were supposedly linked to him around the draft and before all that. And if that's a name that's still floating around, you may have to do a lot more shuffling with the defense, especially on the right side. I'll try to figure all that out. But that's another option that could be out there too. Scoring option and defensive option.
I think the forward thing popped into my mind. I was listening to a really bad podcast, Locked On Penguins with Hunter Hodes. And the name that they mentioned was Troy Terry in Anaheim, if he were to be available. And if you get him, he plays not like that's a top six winger. Obviously, I think his best hockey's still ahead of him, by the way. I think what it allows you to do, though, is move somebody down the lineup like a Brian Rust and maybe provide some scoring punch within the third line. So that's why I say, if you can't upgrade the defense, if the Karlsson thing falls through and you're still stiffing around the trade market, maybe you pivot away from defense and look the forward route to improve your secondary scoring. Even if it's going to be acquiring a guy for the top six, it also pushes your strength down, within the middle six as well.
I like that idea as well, especially with Brian Rust being the guy that doesn't get the boot necessarily, but he's a guy that can play, both power play and
he's done it.
kill.
He's moved up and down. He's done it in the past. So
so fewer minutes in terms of 5-on-5, so he can spread his time onto both special teams units as well. It's reserves him a little more, keeps him, rejuvenated as much as possible, and I think that's another great option. I wouldn't mind seeing him bounce to the third line once or twice this season, just to really see how it can go.
I'd love to see Troy Terry's arbitration numbers. That's gonna have to probably come out here. Tweet by Elliot Friedman. What are the arbitration numbers? What's Terry looking for? Because they have both Terry and Zegras right now that are RFAs and unsigned. So that's a really intriguing one, especially because whether that's Rust or Smith, that's a massive add to your third line, getting one of those guys to move down. And regardless, it's injury insurance too, because it's the same thing as last year. Are the Penguins going to be as healthy as they were last year? I mean, you hope so, but at the same time, if you're not, who's going into the top six? Like, are you
That's
really?
another thing. Like, when you look at the bottom six of past years, like you don't have an Evan Rodriguez or a Jared McCann down there that can jump up into the top six in a pinch. I mean, the one guy, I guess, if he lives up to the pedigree, would be like a Nylander. If he is, somewhat of the player that he looked like. He passed the eye test last year. Maybe he provides some scoring punch in the second wave of players there. I maybe Drew O'Connor, if he's even on the team. Like, I know that he's been kind of floated out there. Could he be going to a third team or San Jose in this rumored Karlsson thing if it goes through? I mean, it's all very speculative, obviously, but I just right now when you look at that bottom six, and if an injury happens in the top six, who is it that's jumping up?
No matter what the backup plan is, one of two names is going to be gone though, and it's either going to be Mikael Granlund or Jeff Petrie.
Yeah,
one of those two has to be gone, and it might be determined by which position they're trading for. If it is Karlsson, Petrie could be gone because of the defenseman, and if it's Granlund, it could be a forward.
It'd be a real shame if it was both.
I wouldn't really hate it if it was both. And And that's nothing against Petrie. It's everything against Granlund. But I think that you look at the team, and we talked about this last week, that we were curious because they were already over the cap, and then we saw them signing more guys, and it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Because obviously those are contracts you can bury down in Wilkes-Barre. They're like $775,000 and $800,000. Like, it's not a big deal even to carry it at the AHL level, but which, like, you're going to keep adding on contracts. I just refuse to believe that Dubas is done if you're going to keep adding these guys and you're just going to go into the season the way it is. I just don't think that's the case. He's adding a lot of bottom six depth to the forwards. And so I think that forward isn't necessarily being rolled out right now. I think Smitty's onto something. Just because I don't really love the forward group as a whole. Like, I think I've said, like, based off of where they ended last year, I don't know that they're overall is overly better team than they were when they ended last year. I think they're different, but I don't think they're necessarily better. I think they're a fringe playoff team like they did last year. They're going to be fighting for a last wild card spot. So I do think that whether it's Erik Karlsson or a forward or another defenseman, they have to make a move to really put them over the edge. Because as of right now, you got better defensively in the bottom six, but I don't necessarily think that's going to make you pushed over the edge to put you in that playoff spot again.
Just remember, Vladimir Tarasenko is still out there. If you're looking for forwards in this, if we're getting a Smitty bomb out of nowhere as well, it's that the forward options are slimmer, especially when it comes to what we've been diving into here in Erik Karlsson. But any sort of offense could help this team. You're right. I think the team's marginally better, at least. But in terms of defense,
that's the thing. They're better, but I don't think by a ton. Like, I don't think you look at, even though there's a lot of new names on the roster, it's not a roster you look like it, and it's like night and day better. Yeah. Like, you're going to have to really look at the analytical side of the game to notice how this team is better than where they were from the roster that ended last season.
The idea is to give up fewer goals and have no drop off from the core.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a big thing. But one thing that I'm looking at, and we're not going to know this until the season starts and we actually start to see hockey being played, is what does it look like now that the general manager and the head coach are on the same page when it comes to personnel? Because I will say, this roster, although not looking better on paper, not looking better goal scoring wise, yes, a little bit better defensively, does look a little bit more like the 2016 and 17 teams that Mike Sullivan inherited and built up than it did last year. I mean, Lars Eller is not a guy that's going to put in 20 goals a season, but he is a guy that is going to play pretty good defense. He's going to kill penalties, and he got some good foot speed, kind of like a younger Nick Bonino. And Noel Acciari is kind of more like a younger, well, not really much younger, but Matt Cullen in 2016 and 17. So while I don't know if those are going to be great comparisons, we'll have to wait and see. With a coach and a GM on the same page, how does that end up changing what it looks like on the ice? Because last year, we know they were butting heads. He who shall not be named and Mike Sullivan were butting heads, and that then affected the on-ice product. So we'll see what happens when it comes to if these guys are able to execute the plan. But
a lot of this might not matter unless Jari stays healthy too.
That's true.
It's the golden goose right there.
I just thought about something. By the way, with mentioning that Dubas and Sullivan are on the same page, if he was still on his previous team, Jacob Chikrin would have been traded to the Penguins by now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was going to mention his name when we were talking about Karlsson, just because we heard Chikrin's name in trade rumors for quite a bit before he was actually moved. You almost wonder if San Jose, if the offer's not on the table for them, if they kind of play the same game and wait till, in season, like around the trade deadline to move them.
I mean, they have that ability to do that, but
it's going to be ugly because Karlsson's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be there. I don't know how, he's going to react if he has to, report the training camp with them and go into the season, and how awkward that situation would be, but it'd be fun to see.
He's been in America for a while. Maybe he's watched the NFL. He can hold out.
So I was gonna say, at least hockey players don't act like football players in that sense. Like, if they have a contract, they're showing up. Like, there's no other way around that. If they don't have a contract, that's different. Look at William Nylander. He didn't have to show up. He didn't have a contract set. And hopefully none of that happens with Dubas, by the way, whenever it comes to these RFAs and upcoming UFAs. Can't have any of our guys holding out. But
you're telling me you don't want a Drew O'Connor holdout till December 1st?
You know what? It'll give us news.
I wanted to talk about Drew O'Connor real quick because I wondered if either of you guys thought it meant anything with it going to the last day that it possibly could be for arbitration. If that meant, Dubas was trying to keep this window open, or if there was any reasoning for that being in your guys' mind.
It's just
in terms
so
of like,
far
because
away.
of it opens, the second buyout window. I know Dubas really does not want to use that. Or like I said earlier, if O'Connor's rights maybe were going to be a trade piece.
It's just the fact that it is so far away makes it interesting. I haven't thought of it often as his rights being a trade piece, more or less. That's cutting it down to the wire in terms of opening up that second buyout window, probably buying out Mikael Granlund. We know it's a last resort thing, but those savings are too much to pass up unless you really believe he can find something.
That's something you can find.
The door. But it opens up that window, and it's a great opportunity to take. And then maybe you have Drew O'Connor sticking around. You now have saved almost $4 million in a Mikael Granlund buyout, and you ship off Petrie to try and figure out the Karlsson deal. It's a lot of moving pieces that lining up is hard to do. But the fact that it is the last possible day it throws a lot into the blender.
It's the NHL loving drama for as little as they give us. It's the NHL being like, oh, okay, you know, this team is involved in one of the potentially biggest trades of the offseason. Let's just play that out a little bit more. Let's stay in the spotlight a little bit more. What they failed to calculate is people are going to get tired of, oh, it's down to two teams. Like, how many more insiders are going to put that, oh, it's down to the Hurricanes and the Penguins, before we just look at it and say, can a third team just jump in just to screw everybody over? Like, at this point, I mean, just other than Frank Saravalli, can somebody just say there's a third team just to throw a little bit more flair to this weight? Because at this point, it's a standoff, and nobody's really getting any drama from it because it's just Greer waiting.
I want the most random team to all of a sudden be involved, whoever that would be.
Someone who like can't afford it, doesn't need Colorado getting in there would be weird.
Oh no. See, I don't know, because then I start picturing it actually happening, and that's disgusting.
Imagine the power play if you went. Imagine the power play if you went to Edmonton.
I mean, that power play made a rich man out of Evan Bouchard. So
imagine the Penguins penalty kill from last year trying to defend that power play with Erik Karlsson.
They'd be scoring at like a 75% clip.
20 seconds into the power play, it's over.
Is that it?
Yeah.
The other name that I wanted to bring up, we've kind of danced around the Tristan Jarry thing. Pretty lofty commitment to Tristan Jarry, considering, the season he's coming off of, the laundry list of injuries that he's dealt with over the past few seasons. They got to feel pretty good about his long-term health here. I'm not one of those guys that's like, buys into a bunch of things that a player is saying. It's kind of like, go out and show me it. Obviously, Tristan, his media availability, everything sounds good that he's saying, 100% and stuff like that. Is your guys' comfort level with Tristan Jarry anywhere close to the franchise's obviously is?
I don't think I've been fully comfortable with a goalie since the early Fleury days. I don't know why. It's just something about goaltenders in this town. I mean, even in the early Fleury days, like, there were some shaky times there, and then obviously the postseason would speak for itself for Fleury. But now when it comes to Jarry, I'm at least confident enough that, Brlansky blindly read me some stats from goalies, and Jarry had the best ones. And when it comes to the free agent market, at the time of signing Jarry, we had no other choice. Unless we were going to make a trade, but as we all now see, we're involved with Erik Karlsson. We're involved with bigger fish than a goalie. We had no other option. It was our best option, and it's one that should work out if he stays healthy and if he can really prove himself to have a bounce-back season. I mean, no one's questioning his skill. No one out there at all is questioning the skill of Tristan Jarry. Maybe some random drunk Yinzer, but I mean, that's run-of-the-mill in this town, is it not?
It is.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned laundry list of injuries. I personally count two. And to me, that's one injury last year that hampered him. And then that's Anders Lee dropping his whole self on Tristan Jarry the season before. Now, last year, part of that might also be mismanagement. I mean, you look at the fact that Casey DeSmith was the only goaltender out there. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And, you take what Tristan Jarry said for what it is. It's a goaltender who just got paid, who's hoping to, change to the next chapter. But he did mention that he was feeling it in training camp. And nobody said anything until they went on a 7-game losing streak 3 weeks into the season, that he had then physical issues. And then he continues to play for another month and a half. So if you knew he was injured in training camp, whether that's the truth or not, I'm not sure why he would lie about that fact. Mm-hmm. Then why wasn't a contingency plan put in place? Because they still utilized him way too much in the first half of the season before he got injured in the Winter Classic. So part of that might also be usage, where he just never got an opportunity to get a break, and he wasn't able to actually fully heal until the end of the season. So I'm not sure what that ended up being last year. Obviously, Jarry said it wasn't chronic. I have no idea whether it was or not. So it's a question of what will he look like this season? And if it wasn't chronic and it really was just mismanagement by Ron Hextall, then I think you're going to just look at the season and see if he can get back to that all-star level, because he was a 2-time all-star in the past 3 seasons. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy, which is obviously the golden question. I would like to say yes, because I've seen time and time again where, Jason Zucker, he can't stay healthy. Why don't you trade him? Well, because he scored 27 goals when he was healthy. What happens with Jarry? You're hoping the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. When I say laundry list, I should say the amount of time, not necessarily specifically the injuries that happened, but the amount of time that he's missed over the last few seasons, obviously. And I think that it doesn't help when, honestly, you stack up the numbers, and it's not like Casey DeSmith is a bad backup. When you look at the other backups around the league and also what would have been available in that market, I think it's just frustrating to have it that duo. That they ran it back with that duo again. And obviously how they got burned in the postseason by that duo not being available or poor performance. But yeah, they got to feel good about this. And you mentioned, that there was some stuff floated out there that it was like a chronic thing. The Penguins obviously feel really good about this, about where his health is at to commit this to him. And I don't have a problem with the cap hit. I think that's fine. It makes him like the 12th highest paid goalie in terms of average annual value. That's completely fine. The years to me is what gets me, and it won't if he can stay healthy. And that's honestly going to be the biggest question. I feel like that's kind of like obvious, but still worth saying.
I'll be looking at his contract the same way I looked at Tanev's until he left. Every new season is, all right, let's do this again. Let's prove that you can still cut this in your position at this money value, and we'll go from there, 1 year at a time.
And at the end of the day, too, who else? Like, I know we've asked that, and it's an obvious question too, but like, who else were you going to get? Like, not only was the free agent market slow, like you weren't going to get anybody better at the free agent market, but like, no goaltenders have been traded. None. Not a single one. Hellebuck and Gibson, for whoever you want, they're all still sitting on their same team.
I would have been more upset about trading for Gibson than re-signing Jarry to what he got, by the way.
Exactly.
I think the pipe dream that I had was Jeremy Swayman.
I was with you. I was right there with you all along. I was like, you know what? And there were rumors. I mean, Friedman kept saying, and I kept quote tweeting it. I kept putting it out there. I said, he keeps saying that one of these two goaltenders in Boston is going to be gone. I'm like, if it's Swayman, there's no better option, right? There is no better option to go out and get Jeremy Swayman. That guy has a lot more to give than what he's shown in Boston, simply because he was playing behind the Vezina Trophy winning goaltender in Landon Saltmark.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. I know that, fans are pretty iffy on it. I don't want to say the Penguins were kind of backed into a corner with it, and hey, I mentioned it. I don't know if you guys heard this or not. If you guys have heard this, not from me even, but from somebody else. I felt like I could put this out there because now we are past this era totally. Ron Hextall and Tristan Jarry's agent were close on pretty much this exact same deal last season. In season, and it didn't materialize.
Forgot about that. Yeah, the asking price probably just didn't change, and whenever a new GM comes in, or new president of hockey operations comes in, I guess we should say, comes in and took the time to fly to Edmonton to meet with him in person is, first of all, great showing of Dubas's character, but it builds the confidence for the goalie as well. The asking price isn't going to change in that sense, especially considering, like I said, Brlansky read me blind numbers. Tristan Jarry stood out as.
That's going to be a new segment, by the way. Brlansky blind numbers.
We call it Name That Stat Line, and we do it very sparingly, but
I think
Brlansky blind numbers is better.
But I like the idea.
Yeah. Do you guys think that Casey DeSmith is on the roster to open the season? Because here's what I said. Like with who did we bring in last year? Dustin Karski. Yeah. And then Louis Domingue. I looked at those signings and I was like, okay, those guys have played in the NHL, but that could easily just be AHL goalies. When I brought in Nedeljkovic, I've just felt like that was more like an actual NHL backup goalie that you're bringing in. So that tends to lead me to believe that Casey DeSmith could be gone to start the season. What do you guys think?
Unless they want to run with the 3-goalie system, I would assume he's on his way out too. I think at the end of the season, it was, I don't want to say a foregone conclusion that he was going to get dealt at some point, but I think at least me in my head thought it was only a matter of time before Casey DeSmith found the door. And now with Nedeljkovic being in here, if DeSmith is still around, it'll give him competition. But also, there's also Magnus Hellberg in there. There's 4 goalies. I know Sparks. He signed an AHL deal. He ain't got nothing to worry about. But that does add another. There's how many goalies with NHL experience in the system, or guys vying for NHL time in their future in Taylor Gauthier and Joel Blomqvist. We all of a sudden have an overstuffed cabinet of goalies that DeSmith, in my eyes, would become the odd man out because you can get a good return for him and still roll a 3-goalie system if you really wanted to with Jarry, Nedeljkovic, and if you have that much confidence in Hellberg.
Garrett Sparks is going to start game 1 of the playoffs, by the way.
Just because that's how things always roll in this town.
And he's going to win, too. That's the thing. He's going to look great. He's going to win. And then people are going to be like, oh, start him in game 2. And Sullivan's going to be like, no.
He'll get his name on the cup, though.
That's true. That is true. Got to love Jeff Sadkoff.
Brlansky, your take on the goalie situation.
I think Casey DeSmith is part of every and all conversations involving Erik Karlsson right now. I think he is in all of those trades, because when you look at the San Jose Sharks, yes, they're not trying to win right now, but Kaapo Kähkönen was an unmitigated disaster last season for them, and that was their backup guy. They're probably going to include Casey DeSmith, because why else would you sign 16 other goaltenders if you weren't planning on trying to get rid of the expensive backup that you have? Nedeljkovic, say what you will about his performance in Detroit, the Yzer plan is not kind to goaltenders up there. So I do believe with him, Hellberg, Sparks, and the fact that you have Joel Blomqvist in the AHL this season for the first time, or at least expected to be, they're not going to try to limit his ice time down there because he's the future of the goaltending position for them in 2 to 3 years, similar to what Philip Gustafsson is right now for Minnesota is what you're hoping for. So I do think that Casey DeSmith is off the roster. If he's not, it's simply because nobody would take him. But I would be shocked if Kyle Dubas' every call includes, hey, Casey DeSmith looked pretty good World Championships. You want to take us off our hands? So that's at least what I would expect. But again, the offseason is a fickle thing, especially with a volatile situation in Erik Karlsson.
And July 1st, hold on. July 1st, free agent frenzy, right? Kevin Weeks opens up the show. First thing that he's talking about is the goalies that are on the trade market, and he said Casey DeSmith was available. Nothing's come since then.
This is true. Other than, an interesting tweet by Kevin Weeks, nothing else has come out from Kevin Weeks since then.
Yeah, has he gotten his Twitter back, or what's going on?
I don't know. Did anyone get their new MacBook Air yet? I was
submitted my money for it, cash apped them, and I haven't gotten it yet. So
what I was gonna say was not that Kyle Dubas has to care about what Penguins fans think at all, but we've talked about it on our show. It is a tough sell from a PR standpoint to go into the season with the same 2 goalies, even if statistically they weren't as bad as what the perception of fans think it is. You just look at what the past 3 seasons have come with the playoff exits and then not making the postseason. I mean, you're going to be asking a lot if you're rolling into the same two goalies and not expect any backlash if it comes to bite you too, at least from a fan perspective.
And I'm with you on that. I said going into last season that they should have been looking for a new backup because it's not often you see this many consecutive seasons of the same goaltending duo. You know, you're back. You might have your starter set in stone for a long time, but you're usually filtering in and out of backups. Casey Smith has been playing NHL hockey since 2017 with this team. He hasn't had another home in the NHL, and you know, that's a long time for a backup, at least, to be in one place. I can't think of any other, at least in Pittsburgh's history, that's had a backup in town for that long. I mean,
he's been a backup longer than Jari's been a starter.
Exactly. He's been here since the Murray days. Didn't share time with Fleury, but since Murray was here.
The only other thing I'll say about that, too, is the one thing Kyle Dubas showed in Toronto, he's not afraid to switch it up a goaltender. He might pull a midseason trade. We talked about Karlsson, and the Sharks might wait until the season. Look at the Jets and Hellebuck. They might wait till the season. Boston and Swayman, they might wait until the season. If you really need to do it, I mean, he pulled the ripcord on Freddie Anderson. He pulled the ripcord on Jack Campbell. I don't think he'd be afraid to pull the ripcord on Casey Smith. Certainly. The thing that you have to question then is how long is his leash going to be with Tristan Jarry on a year-by-year basis? He's not going to do that mid-season, but you know, Casey Smith, I don't think he should get too comfortable if he does indeed even win that backup position in training camp, because there's a chance that Alex Nedeljkovic comes in and just completely blows him out of the water. Although DeSmith is a training camp hero, at least he was last season.
By the way, everyone in the organization not named Ron Hextall wanted to trade for a backup goalie last year, and Hextall didn't want to.
Well, you know what they say, goalies know goalies, right?
He pushed back at the trade deadline on acquiring somebody.
Yeah. Yep. I know exactly.
And nobody knew about it because their phones were in the middle of the table.
It's true. That is true. Anything else Pens related we should cover? I don't think so.
I mean, Erik Karlsson's been the only thing surrounding this team.
How great would it be if we were sitting here and the trade went through?
I was thinking about that 5 minutes ago.
I don't think it would. It would be on near the level of whenever Brlansky and I were doing a live show on trade deadline day, and here comes the tweet. I forget who did it first. It may have been Dreger or LeBrun. Jeff Carter confirmed to the Penguins. At the moment, the fact that we got that on recording, hey, you know what? We're about this. Let's go. Since then, looking back, man, what a time it has been with Jeff Carter on this team.
We only had one thing two things happen, I think, live that have been like significant. I think the Patrick Hornquist extension, what happened when we were recording a show. And then what was the one where we had to stop? We had already quit recording and then we had to come back. Was it the Gino extension last year? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right before free agency, like the night before free agency.
Yeah, we had stopped recording and then like literally 20 minutes after we got off, it was announced. So we had to come back and just re-record that entire segment.
Yep. Good times. Speaking of extensions, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about an extension, not with the Penguins, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But these guys are going to be sticking around to talk with us. We'll be right back. All right, this is where Noah Strackbine comes in. No, I'm just kidding. He's not here. The Pittsburgh Steelers, not to be outdone by anybody, had to get an extension done today. Very quietly, normally you see insiders breaking this news. The Steelers decide for themselves to just put it out there. Alex Highsmith has signed a 4-year extension. We had kind of been talking about this leading up to this, that we thought it was going to get done before training camp. Lo and behold, exactly 1 week before training camp starts, Alex Highsmith remains a Pittsburgh Steeler. They basically ripped up this year and redid it as a new 5-year deal worth $70 million. So if you're looking at it that way, $14 million per. However, the 4-year extension is $17 million per. I really like this deal. I think it's very fair. I think if he goes out and has the exact same season that he had last year again this year, you're getting him on at least a $3 million to $5 million discount on what he would have gotten on the open market. I understand that you are adding to an already very expensive defense by paying it more. I think that's the price you pay. It's a premium position on the edge. I love this deal. I'm really excited that he's going to remain a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, I think that this deal's great. I mean, this is something that you and I have talked about extensively on the show. We've had Alex on here twice, actually. I mean, we're big fans of his off the field and on the field, and so we wanted to get this extension done. The number was I was curious, like, because I think you said you thought it would be $15 million per year. I said I thought it could be 18 year. It's actually in between the two of us. It was 17 million. So I think we're both okay with that number. And I think that this deal was something that needed to get done because, like you said, it was going to just go up as the season went on and going into next offseason if you wanted to keep him around. And when you have a duo like him and TJR, you want to keep that together because even though you could say that he is the benefit of playing on the field with TJ Watt. I mean, Alex Highsmith is a good edge just in and of himself, and I think he improved massively last season. And you saw what he could do with TJ out for a long duration of time. And the fact that we'll have this duo together for a long time, it's exciting for the defense, and it shores up that those edge spots for several years. And it's nice that we were able to get it done because otherwise edge is one of those positions on the Steelers where you look behind the starting two guys and there's not a lot of depth there. So you were going to have to either replace him in the draft or free agency if you were not going to re-sign him. So with that lack of depth, you needed to secure your two starters, and they've done that for the next 5 years.
It's the luxury of having a quarterback on a rookie deal, right? I mean, you can go out and you can add to something that you need to make sure is going to be good for you. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're not going to outscore Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to outscore Joe Burrow. Like, I love Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett year two, I'm as excited as anybody. But at the same time, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win by trying to keep the other team under 20 points and scoring exactly 20 points. Like, that's been the method since Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell were here, right? You have to keep other teams down because the Steelers just aren't going to outscore teams. And through this league, rushing the quarterback is the best way to just disrupt opposing offenses. We saw it week 1 last year where TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith just wreaked havoc on the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. And that's how you beat one of the best teams in the NFL. You wreak havoc, you get into the quarterback's kitchen, he throws 4 interceptions in the first half. So I thought this was a really important move for them because they really need to make sure that their back end and their defense is going to be able to lead the way and lead the charge this year. And getting Alex Highsmith locked up is just one way to ensure that that's going to happen.
He's going to be a great player for this team. I won't have much to say because I'm not the football guy here, but no, he's a name that is going to make a difference on this team. I mean, they've been looking for that second guy since Bud Dupree, right? It's not that he's going to be an easy replacement, but Alex Highsmith is a guy that can step up in that situation, play behind Watt. And I mean, football's a tough sport. Watt gets injured again. You have a guy that you are confident in to still be in that same position for him. Also, bonus, he has the same birthday as Sidney Crosby. There you go. August 7th. So we know
there we go.
He'll work out in this town.
I had no idea. And something you're getting with Highsmith that you didn't get with Bud Dupree, now that you mentioned him, is you got a season, maybe 2 of elite Bud Dupree with TJ Watt. Now you're going to get several with Alex Highsmith because you didn't get a Bud Dupree extension. He was gone. He went to Tennessee. That's something that they needed in the duo. So I think that's great that they were able to lock that up because I mean, like Nick was, well, I can't say like Nick was saying, like the Knicks were saying, both the defense is what's going to win for the Steelers right now. It's not going to be the offense. And it was funny because I won't say whose tweet it was, but I saw a tweet saying something about what wins now. They're basically complaining about this deal and adding more money to the defense. And when they said what wins now, I'm in my head, I'm thinking it's not offense, it's Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. And I'm thinking of individual guys, not just offense in general. And the Steelers' way of winning is not going to be, and I hate to say it, kind of like Nick said, it's not going to be with Kenny Pickett by himself. He's not going to be the Pat Mahomes of the Steelers. But with the Steelers' defense, that's what a lot of teams don't have, is some of the players on their defense. So, yeah, obviously they're going to spend in different areas. They're not going to have the $50 million quarterback. But if they have a dynamic edge rushing duo, I'm going to be fine with that.
I think philosophy definitely does come into it where when you think of the Steelers, you're always going to think about the defense first. So I think them paying their defense definitely makes sense. I think it's also they just have a ton of their offensive players still in their rookie deals. It's not like they're going to be totally like against paying those guys when it's time, because they're paying the players on defense. It just hasn't been time to pay those guys yet. They paid Deontay Johnson. He's really the only like skill player making money right now, but they've paid a couple of offensive linemen, bringing in Isaac Smalo in free agency this past season. They brought in James Daniels the previous season. So it's not like they're not spending money on offense necessarily. It's just their offensive players haven't been due for paydays yet. Like when that time comes, I'm sure that it's going to happen. I think next off season, around this time, probably we're going to be looking at a Pat Freiermuth extension potentially. That's the good thing with this Alex Highsmith deal getting done. I'm not saying there's absolutely nothing on Omar Khan's plate right now, but like there's nothing, like not another huge extension on the near horizon that we're looking at. Like it's really next off season, like I said, with Freiermuth, because I don't even think that they're going to be looking at a Najee one at that point, to be quite honest with you, if at all. I mean, to be honest, do we really want to get in? I don't know if we want to get into this whole running back discussion, but they could play it out by just,
we don't know how you guys feel about running back, but
by the time he's up for an extension, it's going to be worth 2 nickels and a Permane sandwich. So like, I'm not worried about re-signing Najee Harris at this point.
But it's so weird because you're talking about a guy that got drafted 1 round earlier in the same year than Freiermuth, but with the way that you are literally trying to milk everything out of that running back's first contract and basically not pay him and just take it season by season. And he was an older prospect, like an older running back coming into the league, had a ton of touches at Alabama. I know that they've done a nice job last year with taking some of that pressure off him by adding Jaylen Warren. And I think he is in for a big season this year. I don't think it's something that's like in their vision right now, a Najee Harris extension, where I do think when we get to next year, this Pat Freiermuth thing could be a talking point. We've seen Evan Ingram just got his deal. I think Cole Kmet's going to be coming up soon, and TJ Hawkinson. They're both going to be ones to watch. And all of a sudden, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to be looking at those, and you're going to be trying to get something done with him, assuming he doesn't suffer a already 4th concussion in the NFL, praying that doesn't happen.
Yeah, you can't, especially at that position, you can't have the guy that's getting injured to hell and back all over. Especially in this town that we had Heath Miller for so long. We love our tight ends, especially with, we don't know what kind of arm Pickett has yet in the NFL. He's still growing it to see if he's a distance thrower. Going to the tight end is going to be a great option for him this upcoming season, and whatever kind of extension he gets thereafter. It's going to be a great target for him. And he's one of those guys that fits in with this crowd. This audience loves him. He's already one of the fan favorites. And if there's anything about Steeler football, is once you're a fan favorite, you're going to be loved forever.
He's got a name they can chant. So he was in immediately.
It's close enough to Heath that Steelers fans are like, all right, this is an easy transition. I mean, the other thing with him too is touchdowns, cash checks. And considering Deontay Johnson had 0 last year, Pat Freiermuth is obviously one of the top targets in the red zone. So it's gonna rack the bill up, especially because he's going to become, the safety valve for Kenny Pickett in year 2.
At least with his nickname, you're able to change it to Moof. When it was Jesse James, they still just said Heath. They said this is a big white tight end. We're still going to call you Heath Miller.
Yeah, we are.
Camp starts, like I said, a week from today. Fans can start attending a week from tomorrow. Tyler and I have kind of touched on some of the things that we're looking forward to in camp. I think the one that jumps off to me right away is what kind of reps is Broderick Jones getting after investing a 1st round pick in him at left tackle. I know that there's going to be a ton of people that think, okay, you spent that pick on him. He's got to be there from day one. I really think that they feel okay enough with Dan Moore where it doesn't have to be. I know the type of backlash that's going to provide, but I'm really interested to see how that battle goes. And it's almost, we lost an entire season of this guy. So I'm just excited for training camp to training camp. Calvin Austin, stay healthy, pal. I want to see the way that they use this guy. I am not going to give Matt Canada too much credit and say I can't wait to see how creative he can get here. But I do think that Canada's best success, especially at Pitt, came when he had this gadgety type player, a la Quadre Henderson at Pitt. So I'm interested to see how Calvin Austin fits in this offense if healthy.
Yeah, no, you said that the Steelers can't outscore anybody. Yeah, with Matt Canada, making the decisions, you got to put that focus on defense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to another rookie, not quite Calvin Austin, considering he's a second year. I want to see what the reps look like between Darnell Washington and Zach Gentry. Because obviously Muth is number one. But both of those guys are touted as great run blocking tight ends. You know, Darnell Washington slid in the draft. For what reason? I mean, was there an injury? Whatever reason he slid. And I was very excited when they got him because he was a freaking monster in Georgia. So it'll be interesting to see what reps he's able to get with Gentry. And then also, I really want to see what Holcomb's able to do at middle linebacker. It's a position that has been devalued across the league in general. But, I mean, the Steelers...
It's the running back to defense.
It really is. But I want to see what Holcomb's able to do coming over here. And I know, Smitty, he already has a direct line to your heart because of the haircut.
Yep, absolutely.
Gotta get to the fans somehow.
We've mentioned on the show before, too, another battle we're going to look at is like RB3, because you've got your clear-cut RB1 and RB2. RB3 is more up in the air with like who's going to play special teams. Like if Anthony McFarland wants to stay as RB3 on this team, then he probably needs to learn how to play special teams more. Otherwise, it could go to someone else, because I can assure you that Najee and Jaylen Warren are not going to be playing special teams. And if you're not on the field being utilized in special teams, then you're not going to make the team. And then another one is like we've talked about, what are the linebackers going to, like the inside linebackers going to look like this season? Because turnover from last year, it's really Mark Robinson, and that's it. Everyone else, especially everyone who'd play significant snaps, is gone. And you have a lot of new faces. So we have no idea what the linebackers are going to look like at all, because we have no familiarity with any of them.
Well, that's to Brlansky's point. Yeah, like Cole Holcomb, they're hoping is the solution short and long term. They paid him pretty decent money, especially coming off the foot injury that he had. So they got to feel pretty good about it. But yeah, I think he is like the guy that's going to make or break if they have that solution in the inside linebackers room. I mean, Landon Roberts, nice player for what he brings to the table as a downhill thumper, kind of like, I think he's brought in to kind of be that Vince Williams type linebacker in the inside. Mark Robinson's still here. Nick Kwiatkowski, I mean, is what he is. That's probably like what we thought Spillane would be, like primarily just a special teams player. Hopefully he doesn't have to play as much as Spillane did actually on the defense. But yeah, I think that's going to be something to watch too. Also, I don't know if a lot of people like even realize this. I feel like everybody just assumes it's done. Like Joey Porter Jr. hasn't signed his contract yet.
Yeah.
So like, hopefully that's done before, the next week.
It's a strange situation too, because how much is the discrepancy right now? Because he probably considers himself a first round pick, and the Steelers were like, well, technically, and he's probably technically what? I was the 32nd player taken. Come on, guys.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I would say though, from what he's going to get, obviously, like you have that one less guaranteed year because of going to the second round as opposed to the first. But also he will be eligible for free agency before guys taken the first round, because he doesn't have to worry about them picking up a 5th-year option. So I don't know. I mean, I guess there's some give and take there. I'm not, trying to advocate for the team here and say it's a good thing that he went in the second round as opposed to the first, but I really don't know what the hang up is. Like I just feel like I haven't seen enough talk about this with only a week to go before camp.
And it's a deal you would assume they have to get done, right? I mean, is Joey Porter Sr. in there like breaking the phones down just with repeated calls? Just, come on, let's get this going. Here's his agent's number. Let's finalize this.
I did see somebody say that there was like more unsigned draft picks from this year as opposed to like previous years for whatever reason.
And it's mostly all in the second round as well. I think it was like a slew of second rounders that had remained unsigned, at least going into last week. So
did they say what the reason was?
I didn't hear a reason. That we'd have to get Noah on to actually talk about that, because he's more tuned into like why that's happening. But honestly, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think by the time that camp rolls around, they're going to want JPJ in the room. JPJ is going to want to be able to be there for his first training camp and actually playing and vying for a spot on the opening day roster. So honestly, I'm not as concerned about it. I think that's why nobody's talking about it, is because I think most people believe it's just going to get done.
Yeah. I mean, it literally has to. It's interesting to see this year as opposed to previous years, the way that it's going down. But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't have much more to add on it than that. It's just a weird situation this year, I guess.
I mean, could be similar to could be similar to the Highsmith thing. Just comes out of nowhere. Oh, it's done. All right, time to go to camp.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I guess it's at least not their first round pick in Broderick, but Joey Porter Jr., probably a very important player for them early, I think, too. I mean, when you look at, we talked about it being a very expensive defense and the, certain areas that they've addressed in free agency and stuff. They did invest in corner there. Like I think they're expecting Joey Porter Jr. to play early for them. It'll be interesting to see if Patrick Peterson does, play a decent amount of snaps on the inside, and if it's Levi Wallace and Joey Porter Jr. on the outside when they go into nickel, or what the plan is there. Shannon Sullivan to me cannot be the answer in the nickel. I would rather see Patrick Peterson there. But yeah, I think they're, relying on Joey Porter Jr. playing early. So get him signed, make sure he takes like every possible rep in camp, and let's go. I don't want this hanging over his head.
Shannon Sullivan stinks.
That's a great way. There you go. That's a great way to end the Steelers talk, and hopefully Shannon Sullivan doesn't see this. Speaking of signing, though, we do have basically only one thing to talk about with the Pirates, because they stink. They've lost like 95 of their last 96 games or something like that. But Paul Skenes did sign his contract. So I want to talk about that. We will talk about that when we come back, and that's basically going to wrap up the show. Nothing else on the Pirates. Again, I think they've lost 95 of their last 96 games. So we'll be right back.
They played 96 games. Did you know that?
Have they played 96 games this year?
No, they played 96 games.
Hey, not bad.
They're 1-95.
Sounds about right. I mean,
would you question it?
No.
In April, yes. But now, no. Absolutely not.
So Paul Skenes was signed to a contract, $9.2 million, which breaks the record previously of $8.416 million by Spencer Torkelson. Still like $500,000 under slot value, which is really interesting. Like the Pirates bonus pool this year, absolutely ridiculous. I'm still trying to figure out where this money's going, because they took a lot of like college pitchers you would think they don't have to spend over slot for. So I don't know where they're allocating this draft pool money to. But we talked about the Skenes pick last week. Obviously, it's great to see him actually get signed. Was in Pittsburgh, visited the Clemente Museum. How quickly can he pitch? Can he get here? Can he pitch this weekend? Or we got the Angels.
He was in the ballpark
Friday. Ohtani's pitching for the Angels. Oh, what a matchup that would be. Paul Skenes versus Shohei Ohtani.
We all got so excited over every prospect getting called up and finally all playing together, and then they just laid the egg. And I mean, it's gonna happen in baseball. And the weird thing about baseball is I say this every draft. It's that's great. We have a great first round draft pick that we're gonna look forward to. We'll see him in 5 years because that's how baseball works. Mm-hmm. It's the longest trajectory into the professional game after your draft pick, especially when the draft is in the middle of the damn season.
Right.
I mean, that's so weird. MLB does things weird, but their progression into the MLB is, for Skenes, it might be long, but the sooner the better, because this team isn't fun. This team is not fun.
I think Skenes will be here next summer.
Yeah, I really think like
it'll be.
They said the plan is for him to still pitch at some point this season in the system. We'll see where he starts out. I think that's going to be very telling. If he starts out, like if they just drop him right now, Tuna and Double-A, yeah, I think he's here next year. And I think the team has every reason for that to happen, because, say he does go out and pitches how we think that he could, wins Rookie of the Year, the team gets an extra first round pick if that's the case. Like the team gets rewarded for his performance if it's good enough. So I think they have every reason for that to be the case. I think he's as advanced of a pitching prospect to come in that we've seen like in a very long time. I'm not going to throw out like the Strasburg or Derek Cole stuff, because everybody has. But I really don't think it's going to take a lot of time. I think if he had to pitch out of the bullpen right now at the major league level, he could. I think he's that close. I do think that I'm not saying he's going to pitch in the majors this year. I'm not going to make that big of a leap. Like I know somebody, who was it that said that he could? It was actually like either Bob Nightingale or like somebody that like one of those guys said that he could pitch in the majors right now. Give him some time in the minors, but I do think that he's as close as we've seen a guy come out.
I mean, when you're losing 11-0 on the night you bring him in, you might as well bring him up to the major league level.
Hey, you know what? You got a contract in the jersey. Go ahead. Have fun.
Did you see that he I don't know if that's common. It probably is, but like they were showing video yesterday when he signed and on the broadcast and stuff that he was like actually throwing in the bullpen and stuff like that. Like, is that common for the guy to just like start working out the day that
he
was
practicing? He was practicing for September.
I say it ain't October. You better say September because he ain't practicing for October.
It's September.
I do like the lofty expectations talking about, wanting to win multiple World Series and stuff in Pittsburgh. You got to appreciate that coming from the guy. But I don't know. Has he watched the team much? Again, 95 out of 96 losses.
I've heard more sincere cheap pops from the WWE in Pittsburgh than that one because, oh my God, multiple
September 2nd, by the way, WWE Payback.
There we go.
We won multiple World Series. I don't even know how the city would react.
It wouldn't know what to do.
There wouldn't be a city. I think the city would be gone if the Pirates won a World Series.
Just leveled golden triangle.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be there for it, but I would tell all my loved ones I love them. I would go to the city and expecting I'm not coming back.
Pretty much. Yeah. We've been waiting for how long to see this team win. And, we've gone to the point where we always forget 2013 happened. But now it's all of these young prospects. We've been we've been hyping up for so long. Every time I talk about the Pirates with my mom, she's like, so how about these prospects you keep telling me about? And I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, they're finally here. They can't do anything.
Your mom is roasting these early 20-year-olds.
Yes,
that's the thing right now with these last couple games is we didn't really touch on that yet. Quinn Priester comes up, Andy Rodriguez comes up. I know Liover Peguero had a cup of coffee up here last year, but he comes up. Henry Davis had been up, so Nick Gonzalez came up as well. So you're starting to see the wave of these guys that we hope is part of the next core coming up to the major league level, and they're obviously going to take their lumps. I don't know that we're expecting to see results at the MLB level right away. But like, they're not just losing. They've been getting flat out embarrassed. I mean, prior to today's win, the Guardians had outscored them 21-1 in the previous two games. Not even competitive baseball games. And forget those two, just taking it back even further than that. This has just not been a competitive baseball team. It's not a good environment to bring these guys up into. It just seems like, and I don't know, I always struggle with how much to put on the manager, how much to put on the pitching coach, how much to put on the hitting coach. But it really just seems like if you're following along with these guys, if you're somebody that watches these prospects come up through the minor league ranks, you see progression their entire time throughout. They come to the major league level, what you obviously still need to get better and should still be getting better at that point. And it just stops. They plateau. Their progression completely ends at the major league level. And so from that standpoint, I think it's very clear that something needs to change. Now, what that is, I don't know. Again, I don't know how to diagnose it and place blame equally to these parts, but it's obviously not working in Pittsburgh.
You just got to start watching the Greensboro Grasshoppers like me.
There we go. Take
it
down.
Back and looked. You remember whenever they won 6 games in a row at the beginning of June? Right, when that happened?
Actually,
no. Okay, they won end of May.
I remember when they
June.
were 20-8. That's all I remember about the season.
End of May going into June, they won 6 games in a row. Since that win streak, they've won 9 of their last 36 games.
So basically, 95 of 96. Like
that's
we're not far
basically
off.
What we're saying. Yeah,
we're not that far
the
off.
ratio is not that far off. Yeah, no, they've been absolutely pathetic, and I think this is the pessimistic side of me just wants them to get to 100 losses again, because how funny would it be to start in April, you're 20-8, and all of us naively were like, nothing could go wrong. Like even if they start to do terribly, they're still going to plateau around like 500, maybe a little less than 500. I mean,
we stupid.
We were idiots just to see where they were, and just for them to finish with 100 losses again. I mean, I as a Pirate fan, I don't want it to happen, but as a pessimistic sportsman from time to time, I would love to see it happen because it would be hilarious.
Here's what I'll say about it is if it creates change, if that's what it took for them to finally like do something here, I'd be for it. I don't care. Lose 100 games again.
Has there ever been an MLB manager that gets an extension and gets fired in the same season?
Probably. The MLB is over 100 some years old, and
yeah, that's true.
The Yankees used to be a
dinosaur
weird organization. I'm sure it's happened. At least
especially because we have no clue. All we know is he signed an extension. We don't. It could have been a 1-day extension. Like the details of it never even came out. So like
that's true.
We assume it's like at least for one additional year. I'm joking about the day thing, but if it's only like another year, I mean, I don't see a reason that they couldn't pull the plug on that.
Oh yeah.
Well, didn't they? I'm pretty sure they got the extension done like right at the beginning of May or right at the end of April.
They started off 20-8, and they were like, "Here you go."
That's what I was gonna say. They signed it like during that, and then we've seen what has happened since.
They just wanted to pay somebody.
Yeah, what kind of change were they trying to get here because of that extension? It's, I mean, yeah, it's likely. But you could.
Was it before Reynolds? Who, by the way,
yes, I believe it was.
By the way,
April 22nd, and then a week later, they went on to lose 19 games in the month of May.
Wait, what was the date?
April 22nd.
So Reynolds was 26th. Okay. So yeah, they, for whatever reason that week, they were just like, hey, we're handing out some money.
And then they chalked it in because they lost 20 games in May. So I think that this team it would be just kind of funny at this point to see them completely collapse in a very sad way.
I talked about
but at least
where to place blame, but Brian Reynolds' season is eerily similar to when Christian Yelich like totally fell off in Milwaukee with, I wonder who was his hitting coach. Andy Haynes, now the hitting coach of the Pittsburgh Pirates, was there working with him. I mean, I don't see it. Like, I have no clue what he brings to this team. Nobody has gotten better under his tutelage. We have Jack Sawinski going into 0 for 20 streaks seemingly weekly. Like the only player right now hitting with any consistency, and this is going to sound hilarious, but it's true, is Jared Triolo, who's on a 12-game hit streak. That's great, pal. Oh, I didn't mention him. He came up too with those guys that we talked about earlier, the prospects.
Good for him.
He's actually played really good baseball. Yeah. But other than that, like Andy Haynes does not make anybody better at the major league level. We questioned the hire when it happened. It was one of those things. It was almost like a Ron Hextall trade. That's a great way to equate it with these guys on the show. Everybody questioned it right when it happened, and people, you're going to have those people that are like, oh, the Pirates know more than you, you're just some fan, blah, blah, blah. Look how it's aging. What has this guy done during his entire tenure? Who has gotten better at the major league level as a hitter under Andy Haynes?
No one.
Give me one name in the comments. I want to hear one.
It's a lot of crickets.
I'm just going to start following the grasshoppers. That's it.
There we go.
That's all I care about right now. Maybe the Altoona curve.
I think the curve were in like second in their league. So
hey, yeah, maybe there will be some playoff baseball in Western.
They're only good in the minors. All of our players are only good in the minors. They get to the MLB level.
They were probably in first though. Altoona was probably in first, and then they were like, "Dang, we lost Henry Davis," and now they're in second place. So they're probably true. Now. You keep plucking this talent from the minors. I'd almost just keep them in the minors. At least win a championship down there or something.
Something to fall back on them. A minor league championship.
Hope for the future. It's everything for the Pirates fans.
Hey, I mean that would just be like the Maple Leafs celebrating the Toronto Marlies winning the Calder Cup.
Kyle Dubas won that, so hey,
he did, and good for him.
He's got a pedigree.
But believe me, I would not give a flying F if Wilkes-Barre won the Calder Cup.
I mean, who's on the team? Who's on the team? Like, Is it somebody that we're hoping, who's the driving force behind that championship?
Hey, the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins are supposed to be. I mean, they might be really good this year. There's gonna be a lot of talent on that lineup.
I hope the players
are good.
If
Joel Blomqvist,
if they lose 1,000 games in a season, I don't care.
That's fair too.
But I hope the players are good when they get to the Penguins.
What if they lose 95 out of 96?
First of all, what happened to that minor league season? Because that got extended.
They made up for the shortened seasons that we had.
Just started tacking on games.
You ever hear of they play 3-game weekends down there? They started playing 4 and 5-game weekends. They're doing same day double headers. It's like Little League baseball.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't play under those conditions, they're soft. So,
all right, won't have none of that.
I mean, with the amount of goalies Kyle Dubas is piling up, he's got enough goalies to play that amount of games.
Go ahead, play every day of the week. We got goalies for it.
Yeah. All right, this has been a lot of fun. Got to get you guys out of here. We've been going for over an hour and 10 minutes now. So if you want to tell the people where they can find your stuff, I know you guys are doing a ton of great work individually and collectively. So tell everybody where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, you could probably catch all of our writing at Inside the Penguins. Also, all of our podcasting, all of our videos, that's usually housed there. If you don't like going to that site, but you should, and bookmark it. You could always follow us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins, or just anywhere you get your podcast from with Tip of the Iceburgh podcast. We're coming up on a break in August, and then it'll be season 5, which is hard to believe that we've been doing this for 5 years. Looking across the screen at the other Nick, it's kind of hard to believe that we can stand looking at each other at this point. But season 5 coming up, starting in September, getting ready for the regular season, and hopefully talking about a completed Erik Karlsson trade instead of just speculating for the 4th and 5th week.
Yeah, that's about it. It's all we're looking forward to. Finding stuff on Inside the Penguins, Iceburgh podcasts, our own personal Twitters. Send congratulations to Brlansky. He gets married very soon.
Let's go.
And
there we go.
It'll be a second time in a while that we've seen each other in person, because Brlansky mentioned that it's any wonder we could stand to look at each other. We started this in the same radio station at Point Park University, so we're still on this ride.
On the banks of the Mon.
You say 5 years?
5 years of Tip of the Iceburgh. Yeah,
that's it.
That's it. That's it. We had 2 more before that with Point Park Pens talk, but
okay.
Nobody listened to that unless they were in the cafe at the college.
We'll be 6 years in a month. That's why I had to make it seem like you guys were just that far behind us when it's really only a year.
Yeah.
But
we had to get the train while it was popping, and you know what?
But you know what's really bad for us is, we would have started the summer after the Penguins won back-to-back cups. They've won 1 playoff series since. So we feel like we're kind of the reason.
No, it was Hunter
that this happened.
It
was Hunter. There we go.
Don't know how. It was Hunter.
I'm actually going to clip just that part of the show and just no context use it all the time.
There we go. There we go. It's like me clipping the Kyle Dubas saying Jaeger and just using that every Friday.
There you go. All right. This has been a lot of fun. Like I said, shout out to Nick and all the great work that they're doing. Ton of fun here. Go check out their stuff. Doing great work over there. For Smitty, for Tyler, for Nick, Tyler and I will be back next week talking about the completed Erik Karlsson deal. But until then, everybody take care. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. Leave a 5-star review. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.